In the first part of the conference, we have spoken about the Hungarian situation. Also, the University of Ulm introduced itself, and there are many challenges mentioned. In the continuation, we will see other international practices, and I call to the stage Magister Friedrich Faulhammer, who is the president of the Danube Rectors Conference, also rector of Krems, the Krems University, Danube University. And he's going to speak about In Search of Excellence, as the subtitle for conference says, through cooperation. So how cooperation can lead to excellence. Magister Faulhammer, the stage is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your introduction. It's a real pleasure, and I want to thank the organizers that you invited me as a representative of the Danube Rectors Conference to give here a keynote. With regard to age, we had a short discussion in the previous session on the different age of institutions. I can add that Danube University Krems is now 23 years old, so it's a pretty young university. And what I'm speaking now is about the Danube Rectors Conference, and this institution is 35 years old. We just were celebrating our anniversary at our General Assembly in Bratislava 2 weeks ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, within this conference, we try to search for excellence in the higher education sector. Searching for excellence also requires for universities questioning how universities see themselves regarding their functions. And such considerations have recently been made in concepts such as responsible science or third mission. These concepts draw attention to a certain perspective, namely the role of universities in a changing society. This is connected to the responsibility of universities towards societal challenges of our time, and it has to do with cooperation. Despite our understanding of the value of scientific competition, without cooperation, without co-creation, there is, in my opinion, no path to excellence. So I am here today in my position as president of the Danube Rectors Conference, and I would like to introduce to you our network, which is an example of working together in searching for excellence. And I'm quite happy that two universities are dealing with that conference, with that Danube Conference on Higher Education, two universities which are also member universities of our network. Corvinus University and Ulm University are long-standing members of Danube Rectors Conference. Our network today has 64 member universities from 14 different countries and represents more than 1 million students. So the Danube Rectors Conference can be a good example for the positive role of cooperation and the university's perception of social responsibility in the development of a certain region, in our case, the Danube region. So how did we start? We started in the 80s, in 1983. The world today presents itself completely different than in 1983, when the Danube Rectors Conference was founded. In that time, the world and Europe were dominated by the East-West conflict and separated by the Iron Curtain. At that time, Eastern European societies were still far from democratic standards we know today. And while cooperation in Europe, as nowadays established, was not within reaching distance, the former rector of the University of Vienna, Professor Richard Plaschka, and the former president of the University of Ulm, Professor Matthias Brückmann, were struck by the idea of setting up a cross-border meeting of universities along the Danube River. And in April 1983, a group of representatives of the universities Ulm, Linz, Vienna, and Budapest, the Laurent de Eötvös University, met in Vienna. And half a year later, the official foundation of the Danube Rectors Conference took place in Ulm. As I mentioned, the founding universities were University of Ulm, Vienna, Linz, and Eötvös Laurent University Budapest. And at that time, the following topics were decided to be dealt with: common goals of university teaching and learning, research instruments, structures and financing, modern administration, budgeting, and international cooperation and mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, international cooperation and mobility. Since the first universities were established in Europe in the 11th century, universities have been a unifying factor for the whole continent. Latin, as lingua franca, was the common language at all universities. And all universities devoted themselves to more or less the same disciplines, mainly medicine, law, philosophy, theology. Another common characteristic of universities then was, and of course even now is, their attractiveness in sending young people's mobility. Scholars and students moved across national borders to study at their preferred universities. In individual cases, this mobility also led to the foundation of new universities in other places. So universities were the central site of progress and science. And science ends not at national borders. Therefore, back in the days, even in the period of the Cold War, universities in general and university networks, such as the Danube Rectors Conference, were always driving forces for promoting unification and cooperation. So, since 35 years, the Danube Rectors Conference is contributing to the search for excellence in the Danube region. And then happened a very historic opportunity to use these driving forces of our organization. That was the European Union strategy for the Danube region, EUSDR, announced in 2010 by the European Commission. This strategy for the Danube region is a milestone for the development of the Danube region. As the second major strategy for macro regions among the European Union, the EUSDR was designed to strengthen cooperation within the countries of the Danube region. The strategy aims to create synergies and to contribute to the coordination of policies and initiatives in the Danube region. Following this approach, the EUSDR was a good opportunity for the Danube Rectors Conference to offer its well-established academic network in the region to implement this strategy. As a network, the competences of the universities assembled in the DRC match with some objectives of the EUSDR, particularly effectively to priority area 7, called Knowledge Society. This priority area aims to develop the knowledge society through research, education, and information technologies. And the member universities of DRC contribute through the coordination of scientific projects. As a network of almost 70 member universities, the Danube Rectors Conference provides the scientific capacities to implement those projects. And we are quite happy as DRC that we succeeded in becoming a permanent observer in the steering group of PA7. And I have at that stage to apologize that I immediately after my talk will leave the conference, as I have to go to Belgrade, where today and tomorrow is this steering group meeting where I should be present as a DRC president and therefore as permanent observer. But what I want to do now is to highlight two projects in this framework in particular. The projects DREAM and Danube Future as flagship projects of the EURSTR in Priority Area 7. The project DREAM, the abbreviation for Danube River Research and Management, was the first flagship project in Priority Area 7. It bundles various research questions on the Danube as well as scientific disciplines and combines research resources of numerous partners. The project aims to harmonize the economic use of the Danube River as a transport route with the ecological requirements of the water system. Hydrology, the management of sediments and flood risks are only some of the topics, and the project represents the scientific input for the Danube River Basin Management Plan. And when we are speaking of the Danube River Basin, we are talking about an area of 800,000 square kilometers, or 10% of continental Europe. The second important project I would like to point out as a successful highlight of the member universities of DRC is the Danube Future project. Following the DREAM project, it opens research capacities of the humanities and social sciences to better understand the challenges, the density, in the entire water system of its catchment area. The project focuses on topics such as environmental pollution, water use, biodiversity, and socio-economic developments, as well as their governance with an interdisciplinary approach. Another important milestone in the development of the DRC through cooperation was established in 2003. The DRC Summer Schools, they form a core activity of DRC. At the beginning, they were initiated by the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe, IDM, in Vienna, and the International House, PITCH, aiming to promote regional cooperation among young scientists seeking to establish a network dealing with the issue of regional cooperation from a Central European perspective. To date, 15 summer schools have taken place at different locations within the Danube region. So far, 9 DRC member universities have served as hosts, and more than 300 students, postgraduates and experts took part in the summer schools. Ladies and gentlemen, cooperation through university networks also requires a good structure. Today, the DRC is based on effective decision-making with its committees. We have a presidency composed of 3 persons, a permanent committee composed of representatives of each member country, and the General Assembly. Our annual meetings, as you know, have become a place of intensive and solution-oriented exchange among experts. And another milestone in development was the establishment of a permanent seat of the DRC Secretariat in 2013. The Secretariat is now located at the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe, IDM, in Vienna. And this is it was a very good decision, because recently it was decided that the new Danube strategy point, which is very much responsible for the further development of the strategy for the Danube region, is also located in the city of Vienna. So we have here very close cooperation between DRC and the Danube strategy point. So DRC has a good basis to interact with several institutions and, of course, other university networks. The DRC is an affiliate member of the European University Association and a partner of DIANET, the Danube Initiative and Alps Adriatic Network, and the ICA Regional Network for Central and Southeastern Europe, KESI, the Network of Central and Southeastern European Higher Education Institutions relating to the life science disciplines. Last but not least, I would like to mention just one ongoing project as an outstanding example of cooperation in the context of our development and responsibility towards society. The so-called EDU Lab project, which has been created by the European Training Foundation in Stuttgart and is very much supported by the European Union's Interreg program, and it aims specifically to increase the career opportunities of young people within the Danube region. Until June 2019, it is building new capacities in order to offer young people from the Danube region opportunities to develop their talents through education and vocational opportunities within their region. With great pleasure, the DRC therefore acts as a partner in the project and for a special benefit. As you know, the development of the Danube region within Europe depends very much on young people having a prosperous future. Obviously, it is still necessary to eliminate economic disparities in Europe, to allow opportunities and raise potentials, and to stop the huge brain drain which we face in Southeast Europe. I am convinced that we, universities, as places of science, we have an obligation to transfer knowledge into society, and the EDU Lab project is a shining example we are very happy to support with our network. Dear colleagues, I have the honor of serving as president of DRC now for almost 2 years, and with a couple of weeks left, I would like to emphasize that university networks such as the DRC are institutions ready to help to overcome numerous challenges within the European Union through cooperation. And I'm quite happy to announce that in our last General Assembly we also elected a new presidency, so we have a good future for the upcoming years. New president will be Professor Ivanka Popovic, the new rector of University of Belgrade, and the new incoming vice president of our organization, who is designed to be the next president in 2 years, is Professor Dietmar Meyer, the rector of Drc University here in Budapest, and I will remain 2 years as outgoing vice president. So since the DRC was founded in 1983, the process of European unification has come a long way. Unfortunately, we are now seeing a rebirth of egoism and nationalism in Europe. What remains important is that universities, with their ability for reason, facts and dialogue, can and moreover should engage into this topic. Minilateralism does not help. Only a balance between interests and cooperation will pave the way for our future. As I stated at the beginning, science and universities are privileged in seeking cooperation across disciplines, across dissenting opinions, and across self-interest. In this understanding, we as Danube Rectors Conference will continue to strengthen our voice and work together with as many stakeholders in politics or administration and civil society in order to overcome the challenges facing the Danube region and by that Europe itself. Coming to the end, today more than ever, universities are challenged in their responsibility towards science, whether in networks such as the Danube Rectors Conference or as individual institutions. We are challenged not only by global competition, digitalization, or the difficult unification process in Europe, but also by the growing skepticism towards science itself. In a fake news era, a fake science accusation is not far away. In this regard, let me conclude by a quotation of Sigmund Freud, who wrote in the 1920s, "The voice of the intellect is quiet, but this voice does not rest. before it made itself be heard. Therefore, let's not be too quiet and let's make ourselves to be heard, searching for excellence in cooperation, not only but especially within the Danube region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Magister Faulhammer, for your very interesting speech, and congratulations for the results the Rectors Danube Conference achieved. There are some minutes for questions. You mentioned that you have to leave to Belgrade for a board meeting, but for the next couple of minutes we can discuss some issues connected to the lecture. So the floor is yours. You can ask questions. And you asked if you are still thinking. I got two questions, in fact, but I just change your order because your last words I think very, very important. And you said that the voice of the intellect is very tiny and sometimes unheard, but it should be made heard. But how? What do you think? What your Rectors Conference can do? What are the means that science could regain its prestige and can make it stand even in the fake news and maybe fake science? So what do you think? What is your proposition also for the member universities?
Well, what we are discussing and what we are doing, I think the main thing is, on the one hand, to come together, to have at least once a year coming together, share our views, share our experiences, and encourage ourselves.
Okay.
It is not always the case that it's so easy to raise the voice, but it's very important to have a kind of a group where you can encourage, be encouraged by colleagues who are sometimes in the same situation. And then to go back to your university, to your country, to again to make the next effort to maybe increase to the situation, to come to a better situation. But this is only one thing. The other thing is that we count on our young people, on our young scientists, and that we would like to contribute to their development and to their education, to their training. And therefore, especially this Danube Rectors Conference Summer School. I mentioned that we have around 300 participants in the last 15 years. And you know, maybe only 300, but this 300 going to research institutions, going to universities with that mindset, they will help us to improve this situation for the future.
Okay. Just challenging you. Do you think that academics should go to the Facebook and the other social media sites and propagate their knowledge and their views more intensively?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm not on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm not on, and so because I wouldn't feel very comfortable. But still, it is a channel. It's a communication channel which is used by so many people, and therefore I think it has to be used also for academics and for researchers, because it is, in certain communities, the only way to communicate. It is not enough just to make an interview to a newspaper if it is not read by anybody or by some parts of society. So I think we have to use also this this channel and have to try to be very careful with it.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to monopolize. Professor Debatim, you got him.
Yeah, but this is a really important issue, because this anti-science attitudes that sort of start to come up. I mean, every sudden you start thinking, well, how is it? Is the Earth really round, or is it a plate? And what is the what is the proof that it's not a plate? Yeah, you know, this is, and Trump would say, well, it could be. It could be. So the question is, I mean, the US, they made the March of Science, and the question is, in this organization that is at least to my knowledge, one of the few really very established university organizations in Europe, also supported by EU. The question is whether these initiatives should not be brought to a much more visibility also for the public. I mean, after all, the society should be entertained and should be educated about the value of science in general. I mean, we would not be there as we are in every aspect if there would not have been science. It's very simple. Cars would not work, you know, planes would not fly, economy would not work. So, but some politicians give us the feeling it's all there, has been there always, and there was no scientific initiative necessary to do that. And science is too, in my opinion, I mean, in medicine we are more, of course, used to also to tell the public what we're doing. But I think science in general should be more aggressive or more active rather than aggressive in this area.
Yes, you are completely true. I support this. Science has to be more active in telling the stories, what they are doing and what they need to be successful. I think in not only in the Danube region, in all our countries, we have this situation, also in Austria, that we have always to fight for the money of science and research. On the one hand, everybody loves the results and loves the universities, but if you come to the point where you have to pay, they are saying, well, they have enough money, so don't give them more. So this is really true, and it is not so easy to convince the researchers and sometimes some university professors to be more open to this communication to the public.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yeah, Peter? There's a mic here, if you want.
My question is very short. I think a big issue is the interface between government and universities. That was, I think, also the topic of the lecture of Mrs. Pavlik. And this is also a question of the autonomy of universities. And you know very different countries here in the Danube region. And my question is, do you see a specific development concerning the autonomies of universities in these political ecosystems universities are working?
That's a very difficult question. Not the question, but the answer, especially speaking here in Budapest and in Hungary, because there are a lot of developments and we had the presentation of developments of Hungarian higher education system. What we are facing within Danube Rectors Conference and within the region, of course, are different types and different kinds and different improvements of autonomy of universities. What I can say is we are deeply, all rectors within the Danube Rectors Conference, convinced that the only autonomy is a good basis and the right basis for good development of universities. So we are striving and we are struggling and we are discussing and requesting most autonomy as possible for our universities in the different countries. But of course, it depends always from the political situation in the countries. But what we are doing, we are encouraging and we are supporting the discussions our rectors of member universities have in their different governments dealing with this issue of autonomy. But of course, there are sometimes, especially in the last years, it is also seen within the European University Association. They are quite concerned about the fact that in some countries autonomy decreases and not is decreasing and not increasing. And so we are very aware of this and are trying to support our universities to bring their governments into the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Thiel.
Maybe a word of self-criticism to us as academics. we so often experience what I call self-referential discussions. We talk about ourselves and we talk about things that very few people understand. And I think it's very important to protect the most important instrument we have, which is scientific methodology. It's very, very important for us not only to limit our discussion to ourselves, but we have to communicate out there in simple words what we are doing and why we are doing it and what the value of that is. I often have enough in Senate of what I call self-referential discussions, and I think we all know that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And another question there?
Good day to everyone. I'm Zsuzsa Megéring from Budapest Business School, from the Future of Higher Education Research Center. And one question connected to the last one, that it is very important to be open as a researcher or as an academic institute. But at the other hand, all of the credentials, the measurement systems, are weighing and measuring only the high academic quality outputs. So in that way, we would like to ask our researchers to do open science, to do communication with the public, but their time and energy, which is put into it, it isn't measured and it isn't rewarded. So it's a problem. But my question is about the Danube region or the Danube Rectors Conference. When we are thinking about the future of higher education, there are different ways, of course, to go forward. But one question is very interesting, that whether we should try to find a good model which would be important to follow. For example, for this region, there should be a regional model which is a role model for everyone who is working in this region, or we should promote the differences between the countries, within the countries, or among the different types. I don't know whether the Danube Rectors Conference has some kind of statement or some kind of thing about this. Thank you.
May I make a comment to the first part of your question, because this, of course, is a problem. How to measure and how to award those activities going to the public. But and I think one possibility is to put it into the reporting system, as we do, for instance, in Austria. We have a kind of performance. We are negotiating performance agreements with our government for 3 years, and one part of it is, what are you doing for the public? What are you doing for open science for the public, and so on? And this will be measured, will be reported, and will also be awarded in a way by the ministry. But of course, in the world of research, it will not be awarded. So this is in the field of third mission, in the field of responsible science, important to be open. But of course, it will never be awarded within the main scientific world. But coming back to the model, what I tried to say with the EduLab. EduLab is such an idea we are supporting within DRC. So the main purpose of this project is to develop a new government model for higher education in the Danube region. And this so-called new model is, in a way, a quite known model in the German-speaking countries. This is the European Training Foundation in Stuttgart, the former mayor of Stuttgart, Professor Schuster. He's very much involved in this project, and the idea is to create a kind of higher education in the Danube region, where it's a closer cooperation with the companies in the region, so that the students are during their study phase also in contact with companies, and which makes it more possible that they, after graduation, find a job in their region. And so this model should be attractive for the students, so that they remain in their countries, in Serbia or in Slovakia or wherever in the region, and not go abroad, because if the students once went abroad, there is a big danger that they'll never come back. And therefore, there is this idea of creating more attractive programs within the region, a little bit following the Fachhochschule-Modell from Germany, or maybe the model of duale Hochschule you will listen in a few minutes. And so this is an idea of proposing a new model, which can then be offered by the different countries.
Okay, thank you so much. And I know that you have to leave because of your plane is starting. So we wish the best to your conference. And also, I urge the participants, if your institutions are not part of the conference, not yet, please consider to become a member. And I think the organization will be happy to receive applications. And thank you again.
Thank you.